comfortable, close your eyes and let my voice guide you into a world of peaceful dreams. It's not movement you can see, but something you sense in your body, a subtle resonance that connects you to the rain, to the roof, to the very bones of the house that shelters you. The light filtering through the wet glass creates its own magic in the small space. Everything takes on a softer quality, as if viewed through a gentle filter that smooths the edges of reality. The few pieces of furniture, a small side table with its collection of well-worn books, a wooden chest that serves as both storage and extra seating, the simple lamp with its warm yellow shade, all seem to glow with their own quiet radiance in this rain-filtered light. The books on the table draw your eye, their familiar spines, promising countless hours of peaceful reading beneath this same skylight. But tonight, the rain provides all the storytelling you need. Its narrative is written in sound and rhythm, in the changing patterns of water on glass, in the way the darkness outside gradually deepens while the sense of shelter and safety grows stronger within these slanted walls. There's something particularly satisfying about being in this highest room of the house as the rain falls. You're closer to the weather, more intimately connected to the atmospheric drama unfolding above, yet completely protected from it. The thick glass of the skylight serves as a perfect barrier between you and the elements, close enough to feel fully part of the experience, safe enough to relax completely into the sounds and sensations without any concern for getting wet or cold. The rain's rhythm begins to find its stride now, settling into a steady cadence that suggests it plans to stay for a while. This isn't a brief shower that will pass quickly, leaving behind only damp pavement and the memory of moisture. This is the kind of rain that arrives with intention, carrying enough water to truly transform the world outside, to fill the gutters and refresh the gardens, to create puddles that will reflect tomorrow's sky and wash the dust from tired leaves. From your perch in the attic room, you become a witness to this transformation. The skylight offers you a front row seat to observe how the rain changes the very quality of the evening air, how it affects the light and the mood and the feeling of the world beyond these walls. You can see the water beginning to pool in the slight depression where the skylight frame meets the roof, creating a small temporary lake that reflects the clouded sky like a miniature mirror. The wooden beams above your head, visible in the slanted ceiling, seem to exhale a deeper warmth as the temperature contrast increases between the cooling air outside and the cozy atmosphere within. These beams have weathered decades of such storms, have listened to countless nights of rainfall, and there's something comforting about sharing this experience with such seasoned witnesses to the rhythms of weather and season. Your breathing begins to synchronize with the rain's tempo without conscious effort. The steady rhythm of drops on glass creates a natural metronome that your body instinctively follows, drawing air in and releasing it in harmony with the precipitation's pulse. This unconscious coordination deepens the sense of connection between your inner calm and the peaceful storm playing out above your head. The throw blanket settles more closely around your shoulders as you sink deeper into the chair's embrace. combination of the rain's white noise, the dimming light, and the perfect temperature created by the balance between cooling air and warm shelter begins to work its inevitable magic. Your eyelids grow heavier, not with fatigue, but with the profound relaxation that comes from being in exactly the right place, at exactly the right time. The attic room has become a cocoon of contentment, a pocket of perfect peace suspended between earth and sky. Here, with the rain drumming its lullaby directly overhead, and the familiar comfort of this special space surrounding you, the evening stretches out like a promise of deeper rest to come. The sound will continue, the rain will keep its faithful watch, and this shelter will hold you safe while the night deepens and dreams begin their gentle approach. The rain finds its confidence now, each drop arriving with more certainty than the last. What began as tentative tapping has grown into something more deliberate, more purposeful. The glass above you receives each impact with a crystalline clarity that resonates through the wooden frame of the dormer window, creating a symphony that seems to build upon itself with every passing moment. You can hear the subtle transformation happening in real time. The spaces between drops grow shorter, the individual sounds beginning to blur together into something richer, more complex. It's like listening to an orchestra during warm-up, when scattered notes gradually find their harmony and merge into unified music. The rain has found its voice, and it's singing directly to you through the transparent barrier that separates the cozy interior from the vast night sky. The glass itself becomes an instrument under this gentle percussion. Each pane responds differently to the rainfall, the larger center sections producing deeper, more resonant tones, while the smaller side panels offer higher, more delicate notes. The mullions between the panes create subtle variations in the sound as drops strike the painted wood and bounce onto the glass, adding texture to the growing chorus above your head. From your comfortable position, you can see the rivulets beginning to form on the slanted glass. Tiny streams of water trace meandering paths downward, gathering momentum and fellow droplets as they journey toward the gutters. The paths they choose seem random at first, but you begin to notice patterns, the way water remembers the routes it has taken before, following invisible channels left by previous rains, creating temporary rivers that last only as long as the shower continues. The light from the bedside lamp catches these flowing streams, transforming them into moving threads of gold and amber that dance across the glass surface. The effect is mesmerizing, like watching liquid calligraphy being written and rewritten in a language you don't need to understand to appreciate. The water draws temporary letters and symbols that dissolve and reform, creating an ever-changing display of natural art just inches from where you rest. The temperature in the room shifts subtly as the rain increases. The air grows cooler near the window, creating gentle currents that stir the curtains and bring with it the fresh, clean scent of rain-washed air. It's that distinctive aroma that seems to cleanse not just the atmosphere outside, but somehow purifies the very air you breathe. Crisp, mineral sweet, carrying hints of wet earth and growing things awakened by the moisture. you become aware of the layers within the sound itself. There's the primary rhythm of drops hitting glass, but underneath that, you can distinguish the softer patter as water runs off the roof edges and falls to the ground below. Garden plants receive their share of the shower, leaves rustling with quiet contentment as they drink in the nourishment. Somewhere in the distance, you can hear the gentle gurgle of water moving through downspouts, a deeper note that anchors the higher percussion of rain on glass. The building itself seems to settle more deeply into comfort as the rain continues. Old wooden beams expand slightly with the increased humidity, creating occasional soft creaks that blend seamlessly with the rainfall's rhythm. The house feels more solid somehow, more rooted, as if the rain connects it more firmly to the earth and sky it sits between. There's something profoundly satisfying about being inside, warm and dry, while nature demonstrates its gentle power just beyond the glass. Your breathing naturally synchronizes with the rainfall's cadence. Each inhale brings in that rain-cleaned air. Each exhale releases any lingering tension from the day. The sound creates a perfect backdrop for this natural meditation, never demanding attention, but always there as a comforting constant. It's the kind of sound that makes thinking optional. You can engage with it actively, tracing individual droplets down the glass, or let it fade into a soothing background that simply exists to hold space for rest. The rain's intensity continues to build, not urgently, but with the patient determination of weather systems that know they have all night to complete their work. The sound against the glass becomes fuller, richer, like the difference between a few instruments playing and a complete orchestra taking the stage. Individual drops become harder to distinguish as they merge into a continuous, flowing percussion that seems to emanate from the very air itself. You notice how the sound changes as the rain encounters different parts of the window structure. The metal frame of the dormer creates tiny bell-like chimes when drops strike it just right. The weather stripping where window meets frame produces soft, muffled impacts that add depth to the overall composition. Even the glass itself varies in its response, thicker sections creating different tones than thinner areas, old glass singing slightly differently than newer replacements. The visual display on the glass becomes more dramatic as the rainfall increases. Streams merge with other streams, creating wider rivers of water that catch and reflect the warm interior light in new ways. The paths become more defined, temporary but persistent, as gravity guides each new arrival along routes established by its predecessors. It's like watching a very slow, very peaceful race, where every participant eventually reaches the same finish line at the bottom edge of the glass. The room around you responds to this aquatic symphony with its own subtle changes. Shadows dance more playfully as the moving water refracts the lamplight into shifting patterns on the ceiling and walls. The familiar objects of the space, books, furniture, personal belongings, seem to take on a more dreamlike quality in this dancing illumination, as if they're participating in the rain's gentle transformation of the ordinary into something magical. temperature gradients create the gentlest of air movements within the room. Cooler air near the rain-touched windows mingles with the warmer air from the interior, creating barely perceptible currents that carry scents and sounds throughout the space. It's like the room is breathing along with you, inhaling the fresh vitality of the storm and exhaling the accumulated warmth of human habitation. The sound reaches what feels like its optimal intensity, not overwhelming, but substantial enough to fill every corner of auditory awareness with its presence. It's the perfect volume for thought, or for the absence of thought, loud enough to mask any distracting sounds from the world beyond, gentle enough to accompany the most delicate moments of transition into sleep. The rhythm has found its groove, that sweet spot where pattern and variation dance together in perfect balance. Each droplet that strikes the glass carries with it the story of its journey from cloud to earth. Some have traveled great distances, riding wind currents and weather systems across vast landscapes before arriving at this particular piece of glass at this particular moment. Others form nearby, condensing from local humidity and falling almost immediately to tap their brief greeting against the window. All of them contribute to this growing percussion section that plays exclusively for anyone fortunate enough to be listening from the warm shelter below. The glass itself seems to welcome each arrival, accepting the gentle impacts with stoic patience and transforming them into music. There's something almost conversational about it. The rain offering its presence, the window responding with its own unique voice, creating a dialogue between sky and shelter that speaks of ancient partnerships between weather and human habitation. This is the same conversation that has been taking place for as long as humans have sought shelter from storms, found comfort in solid walls and sturdy roofs. When the sky opens and shares its abundance, the rhythm builds not just in intensity now, but in complexity. Subtle variations emerge within the pattern. Moment where the rain seems to pause to catch its breath before resuming with renewed energy. Shifts in tempo that mirror the natural variability of weather systems as they move and adjust across the landscape. It's never quite the same from minute to minute, yet the underlying pulse remains constant, reliable, trustworthy as a heartbeat. This is music without beginning or end, a performance that started before you arrived and will continue long after you've drifted into dreams. The rain against glass creates its own time signature, measuring moments not in minutes or hours, but in the accumulated layers of sound and sensation that build gradually into something approaching perfection. It's the soundtrack for transition, the background music for the gentle shift from wakefulness to rest, from day mind to night mind, from conscious control to unconscious trust in the night's ability to restore and renew. The glass holds steady under this gentle assault, strong and clear, providing both protection and connection. Through it, you remain part of the storm while staying completely safe from it. This transparent barrier becomes a meditation on the nature of shelter itself, not isolation from the natural world, but a privileged position from which to appreciate its beauty and power while remaining secure in human-created safety. This interplay between vulnerability and protection creates its own rhythm, one that matches the steady drumming above. As your eyes adjust more completely to the night's embrace, you begin to notice something extraordinary happening across the surfaces around you. The rain, in its persistent journey down the glass, has begun to create an ever-shifting gallery of light and shadow that transforms your quiet space into something almost magical. Each droplet that clings to the skylight becomes a tiny lens, bending and focusing whatever ambient light manages to find its way through the storm clouds. Street lamps blocks away, the distant glow of a neighbor's porch light, even the faint luminescence that seems to emanate from the rain clouds themselves. All of this gathered illumination fractures and multiplies through these countless water pearls, casting delicate patterns that dance across your ceiling and walls. The shadows move with a liquid grace, never harsh or startling, but flowing like gentle currents across every surface. When larger drops accumulate enough weight to break free and trace their winding paths downward, they leave behind trails of shifting darkness and brightness that ripple outward in expanding circles. These patterns overlap and intersect, creating a constantly evolving display that no human artist could ever replicate, no matter how skilled or patient. Your breathing has naturally synchronized with these visual rhythms, each inhale coinciding with the formation of new droplets, each exhale matching their eventual release and descent. The air itself seems to pulse with this interplay of light and darkness, carrying with it the fresh, clean scent of rain-washed air that somehow manages to penetrate even your sealed sanctuary. Against the far wall, where the skylight's influence reaches most dramatically, the patterns take on an almost hypnotic quality. Vertical streaks of brightness alternate with pools of gentle shadow, creating something that resembles a living watercolor painting. The boundaries between light and dark blur and blend, never quite settling into fixed positions, always flowing into new configurations that hold your attention without demanding any effort or analysis. This natural light show operates on its own timeline, unhurried and organic. Sometimes the patterns remain almost static for long minutes, with only the subtlest shifts in intensity or position. Then, a sudden increase in rainfall intensity will send cascades of new movement across every surface, transforming the entire visual landscape in moments. But even these more dramatic changes feel soothing rather than jarring, like watching waves reshape a sandy shoreline. The temperature in your space has found its perfect equilibrium now, warm enough to keep you completely comfortable, while cool enough to maintain that fresh, clean feeling that rain always brings. This thermal balance seems to enhance the visual experience, allowing you to remain completely relaxed while taking in the subtle beauty unfolding around you. Your furniture and belongings become participants in this nocturnal theater. The curved edge of a reading chair catches and holds pools of gentle brightness. A bookshelf creates interesting geometric interruptions in the flowing patterns, its straight lines providing contrast to the organic curves of water and light. Even everyday objects, a coffee mug left on a side table, the corner of a folded blanket, become props in this spontaneous performance. Their familiar shapes transformed by the interplay of illumination and shadow. The rain's voice has developed new layers as the night has deepened. Beyond the primary percussion of drops against glass, you can now distinguish the subtle differences in tone created by varying intensities and angles of impact. Some drops strike with crisp, clear notes, while others seem to whisper their arrival. The combination creates something like a vast, slow-motion symphony performed by thousands of tiny musicians, each contributing their individual voice to a harmony that spans the entire spectrum of gentle sound. This auditory landscape perfectly complements the visual one, providing a full sensory experience that requires nothing from you except passive appreciation. The patterns above continue their slow dance, sometimes forming configurations that seem almost intentional, spirals that echo the shape of distant galaxies, parallel lines that suggest Venetian blind shadows, clusters of brightness that remind you of constellations viewed through a telescope. Your eyes have become expert at following these transformations, tracking the birth and evolution of each pattern without any sense of urgency or need to capture or preserve what you're seeing. This is beauty that exists only in the present moment, impossible to photograph or recreate, available only to those willing to simply witness its unfolding. The darkness between the brighter areas has its own richness, deep and velvety, rather than empty or void. This isn't the harsh blackness of artificial spaces, but the living darkness of night that pulses with its own subtle energy. Within these shadowed regions, your imagination can rest completely, finding a visual quiet that matches the mental stillness the evening has gradually created. Time continues its strange suspension as you watch these patterns evolve. Minutes might be passing, or perhaps entire hours. The distinction has lost all relevance. The rain shows no signs of diminishing, and you find yourself hoping it won't. Not because you need entertainment or distraction, but because this gentle spectacle has become the perfect accompaniment to your own internal settling. The interplay of elements, sound, light, shadow, temperature, scent, creates an environment so perfectly calibrated for rest that your body seems to sink deeper into relaxation with each passing moment. Your heartbeat is slowed to match the rhythm of the larger droplets' formation and release. Your muscles have found positions of complete ease, requiring no adjustment or repositioning. Even your thoughts have taken on the qualities of the patterns above. Fluid, unhurried, arising and dissolving without effort or resistance. Worries that seemed important hours ago have faded to the same gentle obscurity as the shadows on your walls. Plans and concerns for tomorrow exist in some distant realm that has no connection to this present moment of perfect atmospheric theater. The rain continues its patient work, washing the world clean, while simultaneously creating this private gallery of ever-changing beauty just for you. Each drop that forms, clings, and eventually surrenders to gravity becomes part of a larger story about persistence, patience, and the extraordinary artistry that nature creates without intention or audience. Your breathing has become so gentle and regular that it seems to participate in the overall rhythm of the night. The boundaries between your internal experience and the external display of light and shadow continue to blur, creating a sense of harmony that extends far beyond your immediate surroundings. You are witness to something timeless and universal, the simple, profound beauty that emerges when water meets glass, meets light, meets the unhurried passage of a rainy night. This is meditation without effort, art without pretension, music without instruments. It is the night sky's gift to those patient enough to simply watch and listen. A reminder that the most profound experiences often come not from seeking or striving, but from simply allowing the world to reveal its quieter wonders to receptive hearts and resting minds. The storm builds with a deliberate intensity, like a symphony conductor raising hands for the crescendo. What began as gentle tapping transforms into something altogether more powerful, yet no less beautiful. The raindrops now strike the skylight with purpose, each impact resonating through the glass with a clarity that seems to vibrate through your bones. It's as though the night itself has found its voice and chosen to sing in the ancient language of water meeting earth. From your vantage point beneath the slanted window, you can see how the individual droplets have merged into rivulets that race down the glass surface with increasing urgency. These tiny rivers catch and scatter the ambient light from the city below, creating moving patterns that shift and dance like living calligraphy written by invisible hands. The glass becomes a canvas where temporary masterpieces appear and vanish in moments, each one unique, unrepeatable, beautiful, precisely because it cannot last. The sound has evolved too, deepening from that earlier gentle percussion into something more complex and layered. There's a rhythmic intensity now, a drumming that seems to echo not just from the skylight above, but from the very walls around you. The storm has found its stride, and with it comes a sense of being held within something vast and elemental, something that connects this moment to every storm that has ever passed over sleeping houses. Every night when humans have listened to rain and felt both small and profoundly connected to the world beyond their walls. You notice how the temperature in the room has shifted subtly. The air feels cooler now, carrying with it that distinctive scent that arrives with heavy rain, clean and sharp, tinged with ozone and the distant smell of wet pavement and garden soil. It's the fragrance of renewal, of the earth being washed and refreshed, and breathing it in feels like participating in some ancient ritual of cleansing and regeneration. The storm brings its own atmosphere, transforming not just the world outside, but the very air you breathe. The intensity continues to build, and with it comes a new quality of sound. Beneath the steady drumming of rain on glass, you begin to hear the deeper notes, the rush of water finding its way down gutters, the distant splash as it pools in unseen places, the occasional rumble that might be thunder so far away it's felt more than heard. These sounds layer themselves into a complex acoustic environment that seems to wrap around you like an audio cocoon. In insulating you from the ordinary world and creating a space where only this moment, this storm, this peaceful witnessing exists. The visual spectacle has intensified as well, where before you watched individual droplets trace their paths down the glass, now you see sheets of water cascading across the entire surface of the skylight. The cityscape beyond becomes impressionistic, viewed through this moving curtain of rain. Streetlights blur into soft orbs of amber and white, their edges diffused and dreamlike. The sharp lines of buildings soften into suggestions, creating a world that exists somewhere between reality and imagination. There's something profoundly comforting about being safely enclosed, while nature demonstrates its power just beyond the glass. The storm's peak brings with it not anxiety, but a deeper sense of security, a reminder of how precious and perfect it is to have shelter, warmth, and the luxury of simply observing rather than enduring. This contrast between the intensity outside and the peace within creates a heightened awareness of comfort, making every aspect of your safe, dry refuge feel more vivid and appreciated. The patterns on the glass have become hypnotically complex. Water flows in channels that merge and separate, creating temporary geometries that shift and evolve with each passing second. Sometimes the water forms perfect curves, sometimes angular paths where surface tension and gravity negotiate their eternal dance. Watching these patterns requires no effort, demands no analysis. They simply exist to be witnessed, like a meditation made visible, a moving mandala that changes even as you observe it. You become aware of how the storm's peak has changed your own breathing. Without conscious effort, your rhythm has synchronized with the rain's intensity. Each breath feels deeper, more intentional, as though you're breathing in harmony with the storm itself. The increased intensity of the rainfall seems to encourage a corresponding depth of relaxation, as if the storm's power gives you permission to let go more completely, to sink more deeply into this state of peaceful observation. The sound has developed new textures and layers. Beyond the primary rhythm of rain on glass, you can distinguish subtle variations. The way water sounds, different as it hits the metal frame around the skylight. The particular note it makes when droplets merge and fall in larger cascades. The almost musical quality of water finding its way into every crevice and corner of the world above. These sounds create a three-dimensional audio environment that seems to expand beyond the physical boundaries of the room. As the storm reaches its full intensity, there's a paradoxical sense of stillness that settles over everything. This is not the stillness of absence, but the stillness of perfect presence, the way the eye of a hurricane contains absolute calm. The storm's peak brings with it a quality of completeness, as though this is exactly how this night was meant to unfold, exactly how this moment was meant to sound and feel and appear. There's no sense of waiting for it to pass or wishing it were different. There's only the full, rich experience of being present for nature's performance. The water on the glass has created its own ecosystem of movement. Some areas flow in steady streams, others collect in temporary pools before sudden cascades. The interplay between these different flows creates an ever-changing landscape of liquid architecture. Each section of the skylight tells its own story of how water moves when guided by gravity, surface tension, and the microscopic irregularities in the glass that determine each droplet's unique path downward. You notice how the storm's intensity has brought a new quality of light to the scene. The water on the glass doesn't just transmit light, it transforms it, breaking it into countless moving fragments that dance across the room's surfaces. These reflected patterns move across walls and ceiling like gentle spirits, creating an environment where even the solid boundaries of the room seem to participate in the storm's fluid energy. The interplay between water, glass, and light has turned your quiet space into something resembling the interior of a sea cave, where everything shimmers and shifts in harmony with the elements outside. The peak of the storm brings with it a sense of time suspended. Minutes could be passing, or hours. The rain's intensity creates its own temporal dimension, where duration is measured not in clock time, but in the depth of experience, the fullness of each moment of listening and watching. This is time as meditation teachers speak of it. Time that exists not as a river flowing past, but as an ocean in which you float, surrounded and supported by the eternal present moment. The symphony of the storm has reached its most complex movement. Every surface outside seems to be contributing its voice to the composition. Rain on rooftops creating one rhythm, water in gutters adding another, the splash and gurgle of drainage systems providing bass notes beneath the higher percussion of droplets on the glass and metal. Together, these sounds create something that transcends mere weather noise and becomes something approaching music, a natural composition that speaks to something deep in the human soul that remembers when our ancestors sheltered in caves and listened to rain with the same mixture of respect and gratitude. The storm's peak intensity creates an environment of such rich sensory input that your awareness seems to expand to accommodate it all. You find yourself hearing not just the obvious sounds, but the subtle ones. The way rainwater sounds different when it hits leaves versus concrete. The particular splash it makes when it meets the surface of already formed puddles. The way wind carries rain in waves that create crescendos and diminuendos in the overall volume. This heightened awareness feels natural and effortless, as though the storm's energy is awakening senses that usually lie dormant in quieter moments. As you rest in this cocoon of sound and sight, there's a profound sense of being exactly where you belong. The storm's peak has created a perfect bubble of experience, intense enough to be completely absorbing, yet safe enough to be deeply relaxing. It's as though the universe has conspired to create this exact combination of circumstances. This room, this skylight, this storm, this moment of perfect presence where the outside world's intensity serves only to deepen the peace within. The deep hours of the night settle around you like a familiar companion, and the rain continues its patient dialogue with the skylight glass. There's something profoundly different about rain at midnight. The way it seems to carry the weight of the sleeping world. The way it whispers secrets that only the wakeful can hear. The droplets have found their rhythm now, a steady percussion that speaks of endurance rather than urgency, of the long, slow breathing of the earth itself. From your vantage point beneath the glass, you can sense the profound darkness beyond the rain. Not the harsh darkness of storm clouds, but the velvet darkness of deep night, punctuated only by the occasional glimmer of a distant streetlight, catching the water as it streams down the skylight's surface. The glass has become a canvas for these fleeting illuminations, brief golden threads that appear and vanish as the water carries light on its journey downward. Your body has found its perfect position now, settling deeper into comfort as the hours pass. The temperature in the room has reached that ideal balance where you're neither warm nor cool, but simply present, aware of the gentle air moving around you, the soft texture of whatever surface supports you. The way you're breathing has naturally synchronized with the rain's steady cadence. Each exhale seems to release another layer of the day's accumulated tensions, while each inhale draws in the purified air that rain brings to the night. The sound has evolved throughout these midnight hours, developing new subtleties that only become apparent through extended listening. There are micro-rhythms within the larger pattern, moments where 3 or 4 drops arrive in quick succession, followed by a barely perceptible pause, then the resumption of the steady flow. It's like discovering that a familiar piece of music has hidden melodies that reveal themselves only to the most attentive listeners. Through the skylight, you can occasionally glimpse the rain itself, not just its effects on the glass, but actual droplets caught in mid-descent, visible for split seconds when some distant light source illuminates their path. They appear like tiny messengers traveling between earth and sky, each one carrying its own small story of the journey from cloud to ground. Some fall straight and purposeful, others dance slightly in invisible air currents, creating brief spirals before continuing their downward path. The scent in the air has deepened with the passing hours. What began as the fresh smell of approaching rain has transformed into something richer and more complex, the smell of earth drinking deeply, of dust settled and stones washed clean, of the night air scrubbed and purified by countless drops. It's a scent that seems to carry memory, evoking other rainy nights, other moments of perfect stillness when the world paused to listen to the sky's gentle offerings. Your awareness drifts between the immediate sensations and the broader contemplations, the way consciousness naturally flows during these deep night hours. The rain becomes a bridge between the intimate space where you rest and the vast expanse of the sleeping city, the countryside, the world beyond. You can almost sense other skylights receiving their own portions of the same rain, other listeners discovering their own perfect moments of connection with the night's patient rhythms. The glass above you occasionally releases tiny trembles as particularly substantial drops strike its surface. These gentle vibrations travel through the skylight's frame and into the surrounding structure, creating the subtlest of tactile experiences. A reminder that you're not merely observing this rain, but participating in it, connected to its physical presence through the architecture that shelters you while keeping you open to the sky. Time moves differently during these midnight rain hours. Minutes stretch and compress, unmarked by the usual markers of day and obligation. There's only the ongoing conversation between water and glass, the gradual shift of your own breathing into even deeper rhythms, the way your thoughts begin to flow like the water itself, unhurried, following the natural courses, pooling in quiet contemplations before moving gently onward. The darkness beyond the skylight is alive with rain, though you see only fragments of this vast activity. Occasionally, a stronger gust of wind will change the rain's angle slightly, creating new patterns on the glass, new sounds as the drops strike different surfaces at different angles. These variations add texture to the night's symphony, brief movements within the larger composition that keep your attention gently engaged without ever becoming demanding or disruptive. Your body has entered that perfect state of rest where you're simultaneously completely relaxed and fully present. Every muscle has found its natural position. Every joint has settled into comfort, yet your senses remain delicately attuned to the rain's ongoing presence. It's as though you've discovered the ideal balance between engagement and release, between conscious appreciation and the deeper letting go that these midnight hours invite. The rain's consistency becomes a form of meditation, each drop part of an extended practice of presence. You begin to understand why humans have always found profound peace in the sound of rain. It's not just pleasant noise, but a demonstration of patience, persistence, and the beauty found in repetition without monotony. Each drop is both identical to and completely unique from every other, creating endless variation within perfect constancy. As the night deepens around you, the rain continues its faithful work, washing the world clean, filling reservoirs and streams, nourishing sleeping gardens, creating the perfect acoustic environment for rest and reflection. The skylight above frames this ancient process, turning your resting place into an observatory for one of nature's most fundamental and soothing activities. The temperature of the glass shifts subtly with the rain's touch, and you can sense this coolness radiating gently downward, adding another layer to the perfect climate that surrounds you. It's the coolness of renewal, of the night air being cleaned and refreshed, of the earth being blessed with exactly what it needs. This coolness doesn't chill, but rather provides the perfect counterpoint to your warm, comfortable position below. Your breathing has become so synchronized with the rain's rhythm that you barely notice the transition between inhale and exhale. Each breath feels like participation in the night's larger breathing, the way the sleeping world draws in darkness and releases dreams, the way the rain itself breathes life into the earth with every gentle impact. You've become part of the night's respiratory system, connected to something much larger and more patient than the hurried world of daylight hours. The steady nature of this midnight rain speaks of abundance, not the desperate abundance of a sudden downpour, but the generous abundance of a sky that gives steadily and without reservation. There's no sense of urgency, no feeling that this rain needs to accomplish everything at once. Instead, it offers itself drop by drop, hour by hour, trusting in the power of gentle persistence to transform the world below. In this perfect suspension between night and rain, between consciousness and dreams, you rest in the deep knowledge that some of the most profound experiences are the quietest ones. The rain continues its patient work above you, each drop a small blessing, each moment a gift of presence and peace that extends far beyond this single night, creating memories that will carry their own quiet comfort long after the last drop has fallen. As the rain continues its ancient rhythm above, you begin to notice something extraordinary happening in the spaces between the drops. Each impact carries with it something more than water, whispered fragments of stories that have traveled across vast distances. Gathered from every surface, the rain has touched on its journey to your rooftop sanctuary. Listen closely now, and you can almost hear them. The soft patter against the skylight seems to pulse with quiet narratives, each drop a messenger, carrying tales from the meadows it kissed, the forests it wandered through, the rivers it danced upon, before rising again into the gray embrace of evening clouds. Your breathing naturally slows as you attune yourself to these gentle murmurs, feeling as though you've been granted access to an ancient library written in water and wind. The glass above your head becomes a translator of sorts, each raindrop creating its own tiny percussion note that somehow transforms into whispered words just at the edge of hearing. You don't strain to understand. That would break the delicate magic happening here. Instead, you simply allow your mind to drift along with these liquid stories, feeling them wash over your consciousness like pages turning in a beloved book read by candlelight. One cluster of raindrops seems to carry the scent of pine needles and morning mist, and with it comes a story of mountain slopes where deer step carefully through dawn fog. The drops speak of granite cliffs and hidden streams, of eagles circling on thermal currents and wildflowers pushing through rocky soil with determined grace. You can almost feel the coolness of high-altitude air, the way sound carries differently in the thin mountain atmosphere, the profound silence that exists between peaks. Another gentle cascade across the skylight brings with it the memory of ocean spray, and suddenly you're hearing tales of lighthouses standing sentinel against stormy coasts, their beams cutting through salt-thick air to guide vessels safely home. These particular raindrops have traveled inland carrying stories of tidal pools where hermit crabs scuttle between anemones, of seabirds riding wind currents with outstretched wings, of waves that have journeyed across entire continents of water before finally breaking against weathered stone. The rain intensifies slightly, creating a richer symphony of whispered narratives. Now you hear stories from suburban gardens where the water nurtured tomato plants heavy with summer fruit, where it collected in bird baths and provided sanctuary for sparrows and finches. These drops speak of sprinkler systems painting rainbows across morning lawns, of children running barefoot through puddles with arms outstretched, of the satisfied sigh of thirsty earth finally receiving the moisture it craved. Your body settles deeper into comfort as these liquid stories continue their gentle cascade above you. The temperature in your space feels perfectly balanced now, warm enough to feel secure and cozy, cool enough that the sound of rain feels like a natural air conditioning system designed specifically for peaceful rest. Your muscles release tension you didn't even realize you were carrying as each whispered tale flows seamlessly into the next. Some raindrops carry stories from farmland, where they helped cornstalks reach toward summer skies and where they collected in wooden rain, barrels beside red barns. These drops speak of roosters calling across misty fields, of combines moving slowly through golden wheat, of farm cats sleeping in haylofts while rain drums steadily on tin roofs. You can almost smell the rich earth after a summer storm, that distinctive petrichor that speaks of life, renewing itself in countless invisible ways. Other drops whisper of their time in city fountains, where they sparkled under streetlights and reflected the faces of evening strollers. They tell stories of plaza cafes where couples shared quiet conversations over steaming cups, of business people hurrying past with umbrellas clicking against wet pavement, of street musicians whose melodies mixed with the percussion of rain on awnings and park benches. The glass of Skylight continues its role as conductor of this water symphony, and you notice how the temperature differences create tiny variations in sound. Some drops hit the warmer sections and create softer, rounder notes, while others find cooler spots and produce sharper, clearer tones. This natural variation adds layers to the whispered stories, creating harmonies and counterpoints that no human composer could orchestrate. As minutes flow into one another like tributaries joining a river, you become aware of how your breathing has synchronized with the rhythm of these liquid narratives. Each inhale seems to draw in new stories, while each exhale releases any remaining tension or worry from your day. The raindrops above continue their patient storytelling, never rushing, never demanding attention, simply offering their gathered experiences to anyone wise enough to listen. Now the rain speaks of quiet libraries where it tapped against tall windows, while readers lost themselves in other worlds. Of bookshops where it created the perfect atmosphere for browsing dusty shelves and discovering forgotten treasures. These drops carry the essence of paper and ink, of comfortable reading chairs positioned near windows, of the particular satisfaction that comes from finding exactly the right book on exactly the right rainy evening. Some drops whisper tales from forest floors, where they nurtured mushrooms, pushing up through layers of decomposing leaves, where they filled tiny pools that reflected fragments of sky between towering tree canopies. They speak of deer trails winding between ancient oaks, of owls calling through mist-filled clearings, of the deep cellular satisfaction that comes from water finally reaching roots that have waited patiently through weeks of drought. Your awareness drifts pleasantly between these whispered narratives and the immediate sensation of your own comfort. The pillow beneath your head seems to cradle you with exactly the right firmness, while your blankets provide a cocoon of warmth that feels both protective and freeing. The boundaries between your physical comfort and the stories flowing overhead begin to blur in the most peaceful way. The rain's whispered tales now include stories from hospital gardens where the water nurtured healing spaces designed to offer comfort to visitors carrying heavy hearts. These drops speak of park benches where people sat quietly watching rain create ripples in pond surfaces, of memorial gardens where water helped roses bloom in tribute to beloved memories, of the way rain can transform even the most urban environments into spaces of reflection and renewal. Other raindrops carry narratives from school playgrounds, where they filled puddles that became temporary oceans for paper boats crafted by creative children, where they washed sidewalk chalk art into beautiful abstract patterns that existed only until the next sunny day. These drops whisper of the laughter that echoes across wet asphalt, of teachers watching from classroom windows as their students discover the simple joy of rain on their faces. The intensity of the rainfall shifts slightly, creating new rhythms and textures in the whispered stories above you. Now you hear tales from vineyard hillsides, where the water helped grapes develop the complex flavors that would eventually become celebrations in bottles, where it supported olive trees whose fruit would nourish families gathered around dinner tables, where it encouraged lavender to release fragrances that would bring calm to countless evening hours. Your mind drifts along with these gentle narratives, like a leaf floating down a peaceful stream. Each story flows naturally into the next, creating a continuous tapestry of experiences that somehow feels both infinitely varied and perfectly unified. The rain continues its patient work above, each drop adding its voice to this chorus of whispered tales that bridge the space between earth and sky, between your quiet rest and the vast world beyond your walls. In this perfect suspension of time and story, you rest knowing that tomorrow the rain may carry entirely different tales, gathered from new places and experiences. But tonight, these particular whispered narratives are yours to receive, a gift of connection to the broader world, delivered one gentle drop at a time, through the faithful translation of glass and gravity, patience and presence. The hours have gathered themselves into that profound stillness that exists only in the deepest part of night, when even the most restless minds begin to settle into quieter rhythms. The rain continues its patient work above you, but now it speaks in the fuller voice of true darkness, when the world has surrendered completely to rest, and the symphony of droplets becomes the dominant music in a universe grown temporarily small and intimate. Your breathing has found its own natural cadence now, matching neither the rain's rhythm nor fighting against it, but existing in peaceful parallel. Two separate but harmonious expressions of life's most fundamental patterns. The air in your room has taken on that particular quality of deep night air, slightly cooler, somehow denser with possibility and dreams, carrying the subtle fragrance of rain-washed earth that seeps through even closed windows to remind you of the larger world's gentle transformation happening just beyond your immediate awareness. Above you, the rain has organized itself into what could only be described as a full orchestra of water and glass, wind and gravity. There are the steady bass notes, the larger drops that have gathered weight and purpose during their journey, striking the skylight with substantial, satisfying sounds that resonate through the frame and into the room below. These are accompanied by the middle voices, the consistent patter of medium-sized drops that create the reliable heartbeat of the storm. Never stopping, never hurrying, maintaining the steady pulse that your own heart seems to recognize and appreciate, and threading through it all, the delicate treble notes, tiny droplets that barely whisper against the glass, so light they seem to dance rather than fall, creating a sparkling commentary on the deeper rhythms below them. Some of these smallest drops seem to hang in the air for impossibly long moments before finally committing to their descent, as if they too are reluctant to break the spell of this perfect nighttime performance, this concert that has no audience except you and the other sleeping souls who might be lucky enough to have their own version of this private symphony playing overhead. The wind has become a conductor of sorts, not the dramatic, sweeping presence it might be during a thunderstorm, but a subtle influence that slightly shifts the rain's angle, changes the tempo for a few measures, creates brief crescendos and diminuendos that keep the music interesting without ever becoming demanding or overwhelming. Sometimes a stronger gust will send a cluster of drops against the glass in a brief flourish, like a violinist adding an unexpected trill to a familiar melody. In this deep hour, your room has transformed into something like a concert hall, designed for an audience of one, with perfect acoustics for receiving this most gentle of performances. The walls seem to hold the sound lovingly, not echoing it harshly, but allowing it to settle into every corner with soft authority. Even the familiar objects around you, the chair in the corner, the books on their shelf, the plants on the windowsill, seem to be listening, participating in this communal act of receiving the rain's gift. Your pillow has molded itself perfectly to the shape of your head and neck, creating a custom-fitted platform for experiencing this audio meditation. The blankets have arranged themselves around your body with the kind of precision that only comes from patient adjustment throughout the evening, forming barriers against any stray coolness, while allowing your skin to breathe freely in the rain-freshened air. This physical comfort creates the perfect foundation for your mind to float freely among the layers of sound, never needing to attend to any bodily discomfort or distraction. The darkness in your room is not complete. There are subtle variations in the blackness that suggest depth and dimension. Perhaps the faintest hint of light from a distant street lamp filters through the rain-covered glass, creating barely perceptible shifts in shadow and tone on your ceiling. Or maybe it's simply the way your eyes have adjusted to create their own sense of space and boundary, allowing you to feel oriented and safe, while still being cradled in the protective darkness that makes deep rest possible. The temperature in your room has found its own perfect equilibrium, cool enough to make your warm bedding feel like a luxury, but not so cool as to create any tension in your muscles or discomfort in your breathing. The rain has brought with it that particular coolness that feels clean and fresh, as if each drop has washed not only the air outside, but somehow purified the very atmosphere around you, making each breath feel like a small gift of clarity and peace. Your hands rest easily on the blanket, fingers slightly curved in the natural position of complete relaxation. Even they seem to be listening, perhaps picking up the subtle vibrations that travel through the building structure as the thousands of raindrops create their gentle percussion on roofs and walls and windows throughout your neighborhood. This is the rain's secondary music, not the direct sounds you hear, but the felt sense of water's presence everywhere around you. The knowledge that you are surrounded by this baptism of earth and air, this slow blessing that asks nothing of you except the simple grace of receiving. The symphony has movements and variations that unfold across minutes and quarter hours, never repeating exactly, but never changing so dramatically as to disturb your descent into deeper rest. Sometimes the rain intensifies slightly, the drops coming faster and with a bit more authority, creating a fuller sound that seems to wrap around you more completely. Then it might ease back into a lighter pattern, more spacious, giving your consciousness room to drift between the individual sounds and find your own rhythm within the overall composition. In these deepest hours, time becomes fluid in the way it can only when the mind is released from its need to measure and monitor and plan. Minutes might pass like extended moments, or moments might contain the spaciousness of much longer periods. The rain creates its own temporal world, where duration is measured not by clocks, but by the gradual accumulation of drops, the slow saturation of earth, the patient process of atmosphere transforming itself into substance and returning again to air. Your breathing has slowed to match this unhurried pace, each inhale drawing in not just oxygen, but the sense of limitless time that the rain carries with it. Each exhale releases not just carbon dioxide, but any residual urgency or anxiety that might have followed you into bed, leaving behind only the core self that knows how to rest, how to receive, how to exist peacefully within the present moment without needing to grasp or achieve or become anything other than exactly what you already are. The rain continues its ancient work above you, each drop a small ambassador from the sky, carrying messages written in a language older than words, older than thought, older than the conscious mind that tries so hard during daylight hours to organize and control and understand. This is the language of pure process, pure becoming, pure presence. And in this deep night hour, surrounded by water's patient music, you remember how fluent you are in this primal tongue, how naturally you can participate in this conversation that requires no response except your peaceful attention. The symphony plays on, neither hurrying toward conclusion nor resisting its own natural evolution, simply being what it is in each moment, a collaboration between sky and earth, between the vast atmospheric systems that create weather and the intimate human spaces that receive it, and you rest within this collaboration, neither observer nor participant, but something more integrated, more essential, a conscious presence through which the rain's offering can be fully received, fully appreciated, transformed from mere meteorology into something approaching grace, approaching benediction, approaching the kind of peace that exists when all the elements of a perfect night align themselves around the simple miracle of a human being, learning once again how to let go completely into rest. And in this surrender, in this complete release to the rain's ancient rhythm, the boundaries between waking consciousness and dreaming begin to blur like watercolors bleeding into wet paper. The steady percussion on the skylight becomes something more than sound. It becomes a bridge, a pathway that your mind follows into territories where logic loosens its grip and imagination flows as freely as the water coursing down the glass above your head. You can feel yourself drifting, not away from the rain, but deeper into its essence, as if you're becoming part of the very streams that trace their silver paths across the darkness. The first dream images arrive like reflections caught in moving water, fragmentary, shimmering, impossible to grasp directly, but somehow perfectly clear in their ephemeral beauty. You find yourself walking along a riverbank where the water moves with the same cadence as the rain on your roof, each ripple synchronized with each droplet, as if all the water in the world shares one heartbeat, one purpose. The riverbank is soft beneath your feet, not quite earth, not quite moss, but something that yields perfectly to each step while supporting you completely. Above this dream river, the sky mirrors your actual ceiling, dark and alive with the sound of falling water. But here the rain seems to fall upward as much as down, creating impossible spirals and helixes of droplets that dance in the space between earth and sky. You realize, with the peculiar logic that governs dreams, that you're not just observing this scene, but somehow conducting it, that your breathing sets the tempo for both the rain and the river, your heartbeat determining the spacing between the larger drops that catch what light exists and scatter it like liquid prisms. The water in this dream landscape doesn't behave quite like earthly water. It has consciousness, intention, memory. As you watch, the river begins to weave itself into patterns, the current creating elaborate braids and knots that hold for a moment before dissolving and reforming into new configurations. Each pattern tells a story, though not in words or images, but in something deeper, more fundamental. The kind of story that water might tell about its journey from cloud to rain, to stream, to ocean, and back again, over and over, carrying with it the dreams of everyone who has ever fallen asleep, to the sound of falling water. You follow the riverbank as it curves through a landscape that shifts and changes with dream fluidity. Sometimes you're walking through a forest where the trees are made of crystallized raindrops, their branches creating a canopy that amplifies and harmonizes the sound of falling water into something approaching music. Sometimes the path leads through meadows where each blade of grass is actually a tiny stream, thousands of miniature waterways flowing in perfect parallel, creating a subtle, rushing sound that harmonizes with the deeper percussion of rain on leaves that are themselves made of some gossamer material that turns each droplet into a tiny bell. The strangest and most beautiful aspect of this dream world is how everything flows, not just the water, but the very fabric of the landscape itself. Hills roll like slow waves, valleys deepen and shallow in rhythm with your breathing, and the horizon undulates gently as if the entire world is breathing along with you. You understand, with dream certainty, that this is what the world actually looks like. Terrain. Not static and solid, but fluid and responsive. Everything connected by invisible channels through which water and dreams flow interchangeably. As you continue walking, you become aware that you're not alone on this riverbank. Other dreamers move through the landscape, translucent figures who seem to be made of rain themselves, each one following their own path, but all somehow connected by the streams that flow between them. You can't quite see them directly, but you sense their presence. Other people, in other beds, under other roofs, all listening to their own version of the same ancient song that water has been singing since the world began. Some walk quickly, their dreams urgent with the heavy downpour of summer storms. Others move slowly, dream-walking through the gentle persistence of spring rain or the delicate touch of autumn mist. You realize that the streams connecting these dream figures aren't just water. They're shared experiences, common memories of rainy nights and peaceful surrenders, the collective human experience of finding comfort in storm sounds and safety in the rhythm of rain. Every person who has ever fallen asleep to the sound of water on glass contributes to this river, their dreams adding new currents, new patterns, new depth to the flow. You're walking not just through your own dream, but through the dreams of countless others who have found the same peace you're finding now, their sleeping minds adding their own verses to the endless song the rain continues to sing. The riverbank begins to rise, and you find yourself climbing gently toward what seems to be the source of all this flowing water. But as you ascend, you realize that the rain sound has never stopped, that throughout this entire dream journey, the actual percussion of water on your actual skylight has continued, anchoring your sleeping mind to the real room where your real body rests. The dream landscape doesn't fade. Instead, it begins to incorporate the physical sensations of your sleeping form, so that the soft riverbank becomes your mattress. The dream rain becomes the actual rain, and the flowing water becomes the rhythm of your own circulation, your own breathing, your own gentle drift into deeper sleeping. From this elevated perspective, you can see how the entire dream landscape is actually shaped like a vast spiral, with countless streams flowing toward a center that seems to pulse with the same rhythm as the rain on your roof. The water doesn't disappear when it reaches this center. Instead, it rises up like a fountain, becoming the very rain that falls back down across the entire dreamscape, creating an endless cycle of water and dreams, sleep, and restoration. You understand that this is how rest really works, not as an absence or emptiness, but as a circulation, a flow that carries away the day's accumulated tensions and brings back clarity, peace, renewal. The other dream figures converge as they approach the center, but instead of crowding, they seem to merge and separate like streams joining and dividing, each maintaining their individual current while contributing to the greater flow. You feel yourself becoming part of this convergence, your own dream dissolving into the larger pattern while somehow remaining perfectly intact. It's the same paradox as sleep itself, complete surrender that leads to complete restoration, total letting go that results in profound gathering of strength. As you near the center of this spiral landscape, the rain sound grows richer, more complex, revealing layers you hadn't noticed before. Beneath the primary rhythm, there are subtle counter rhythms where water hits different parts of the skylight, syncopations where drops fall slightly out of phase, creating a percussion so sophisticated that no human musician could replicate it. But your sleeping mind follows every nuance perfectly, using each subtle variation as a guide for deeper relaxation, each new layer of sound as an invitation to release another level of tension you didn't even realize you were holding. The dream landscape begins to expand rather than contract as you approach its center, each step revealing new tributaries, new streams, new connections between waters that seemed separate, but were always part of the same vast system. You understand that this is what rest feels like from the inside. Not a shrinking or diminishing, but an expansion, a growing awareness of how your individual need for peace connects to every other being's need for the same restoration. The rain on your roof becomes part of a global circulation, carrying moisture and dreams across continents, connecting your quiet room to every other quiet room where someone lies listening to water's ancient lullaby. Your dream self reaches what should be the center, but turns out to be another beginning, another riverbank where the flow starts fresh, carrying with it everything learned from the previous circuit, but ready to discover new patterns, new connections, new depths of rest. And you understand that this is how the night will unfold, not as a linear journey toward morning, but as a series of deepening spirals, each one carrying you further into the restorative mystery of sleep, while the rain continues its patient work of washing the world clean, preparing it for whatever tomorrow might bring, ensuring that when you wake, you'll wake to a world refreshed, renewed, as peaceful as the dreams through which you're learning to flow. This flow, this natural rhythm of consciousness becomes your companion now as the hours move forward in their own patient dance, and you find yourself settling even more completely into the understanding that rest is not a destination, but a way of being, a way of moving through the night that honors both the need for restoration and the gentle pull of awareness that keeps you connected to the rain's endless conversation with the roof above. The sound has become so familiar now that you realize you're beginning to distinguish the individual voices within its chorus. The quick, bright taps of smaller drops that seem to skip across the glass like children running through puddles. The deeper, more resonant strikes of the heavier drops that have gathered themselves into substantial messengers of the storm's continuing presence. The soft whisper of water finding its way along the edges of the skylight frame, creating the most delicate of harmonies. As the night continues its slow revolution toward dawn, you notice that something subtle has begun to shift in the quality of the darkness beyond the rain-streaked glass. It's not yet the approach of morning, that's still hours away, but rather a deepening, a settling, as if the night itself has found its most comfortable position and is now prepared to sustain this peaceful vigil for as long as necessary. The rain seems to sense this too, and its rhythm becomes even more steady, more assured, like a master craftsperson who has found the perfect tempo for their work and now trusts completely in the process. You let yourself sink deeper into this trust, this recognition that the rain has been at its patient work all night and shows no signs of tiring, no signs of losing its gentle focus. There's something profoundly comforting about this persistence, this reliability that asks nothing of you except that you remain present to receive its gift of sound and rhythm. Your breathing has found its own steady pattern now, one that seems to complement rather than compete with the rain's cadence, and you marvel at how naturally your body has learned to join this conversation without any conscious effort on your part. The air in the room carries a different quality now too, cooler perhaps, touched by the deep of night, but also somehow more substantial, as if the hours of rain have not just washed the outside world, but have also cleansed the very atmosphere, leaving behind something purer, more peaceful. You can almost taste the freshness that seeps in around the edges of the window, that promise of a world being renewed, drop by drop, surface by surface, in a process so gradual and thorough that by morning, everything will be transformed in ways both subtle and profound. Your mind, when it chooses to engage at all, finds itself drawn to thoughts that feel as gentle and persistent as the rain itself, not the sharp-edged concerns of daytime thinking, but softer contemplations that arise and flow like the water patterns on the glass above. You might find yourself wondering about the journey each drop has taken to arrive here. Lifted from some distant ocean, carried by winds across landscapes you'll never see, gathered into clouds that have traveled paths as complex and beautiful as any story ever told, only to release their cargo here, in this moment, creating the soundtrack to your night's rest. And so, the story gently fades, like stars at dawn. Sleep